MakeReal specialises in creating immersive learning solutions across a range of technologies. To download their latest academic paper on how to turn learners into activists, visit makereal.co.uk/activists. Let's talk about sex. Welcome to The Learning Hack, a podcast about the people and technologies that are creating the future of learning. I'm John Helmer.
Now guess what?
Learning is cool. Learning is cool. Learning is cool. I'm learning.
Learning is fun.
And knowledge is power.
Knowledge.
Education. Learning.
Now that I've got your attention, let's not talk about sex, but about Ceyx, spelt C-E-Y-X. Not the mythical king gorily put to death in Ovid's Metamorphoses, but a company that uses live e-learning to improve tech literacy and adoption in organisations. This might not sound so earth-shattering, but before the pandemic struck, tech companies are actually being very slow to move from face-to-face training to online. Ceyx has really stolen a bit of a march, led by its energetic young CEO and founder, Kate Fitzgerald, head of FACT. Who is he?
Hack Facts.
Matt Wilkinson describes himself as a hands-on digital transformation expert. He founded Ceyx in 2019. Ceyx combines live collaborative and social learning in a highly scalable way to help teams build the technology skills necessary to positively impact their ability to deliver. Ceyx has clients in private, public and the third sector, including Deliveroo, PA Consulting and the Department for Culture, Media and Sport.
So, Jay Curtis, head of themes. What did we talk about?
John, this was a bit of a change from the rather highfalutin subjects you've been covering recently. People in organisations just need to be able to use the technology that's in front of them on the desktop properly. And a lot of them, let's face it, struggle.
Me included.
Matt's company provides a human point of contact delivered through the internet that helps solve their individual problems. It's not rocket science, but it works. And it slightly makes you wonder why a lot of the rest of the industry seems so focused on content delivery to the exclusion of dialogue.
The big noise in our world, of course, is the advent of new tools that use generative AI. It's a fast-developing field which is bound to have a transformative effect, so we're going to be covering it a lot. In a way, this episode was intended to be a bit of a pause before plunging forward into that topic. However, Matt, being young and smart, is well aware of what it might bring, and his model, being so agile, responsive and dialogue-based, might well enable him to react a lot quicker than some of the bigger, more cumbersome players in LearnTech. The obligatory AI question in this interview made for a far more interesting conversation than I had anticipated. Matt Wilkinson, it's great to have you on the podcast. Welcome to The Learning Hack.
Thank you very much, John. Yeah, it's great to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to contribute to your podcast.
First off, I need you to tell me how you pronounce the name of your company, and then is it as cynical a naming policy as it might seem to some?
Yeah, it's a question I've had many times before, and likely a few times as well. So yeah, it's broken the ice with a few customers, I'll say that, and it's pronounced in a couple of ways, as in CYX or CX, and it's actually the concept of the name we came from Greek mythology. So and it also stands for your cloud experts, but in obviously a jumbled up way.
Right, okay. So yes, so it has a classical heritage. Yes, I was just reading up on the classical figure. It's quite a sad story, quite tragic. So.
It is.
Let's go into that because your story is much more interesting and optimistic one. So tell us about what you do, what the company does, and what the need is that your company serves.
So we provide live learning, and we do it in a very different way. So the target is ultimately to remove frustration from technology that I find a lot of people have, and it ultimately enables our customers, learners to get more out of Google Workspace or Microsoft 365 and other technologies as well. So how we do it, it's a little bit different, but we provide daily options of 60 to 90 minute live sessions and help the learner understand and ask questions about an objective of what they want to do with technology, for example, around Google Workspace, or might not know how to use it as such. So it's a technology that everyone uses every day to get more efficient with. And ultimately, I like to think that we're halfway in the middle of a dedicated learning service that people have, and e-learning content and YouTube content that a lot of people go to learn about how to use Microsoft Teams or Google Workspace.
So you have e-learning content on there, but it's mostly live, digital.
Absolutely, John. The biggest feedback we get, and the more positive feedback is people can ask a question. They don't have to Google and search for things on YouTube, so they can reach out to our experts that are delivering the sessions, and at the end or even during the session, ask a question about, actually, I've got this specific challenge, and the guys will work well to try and answer that question.
So how did the company get started? I mean, what's your personal background, and how did you get to start the company?
So some of you worldwide customers might not know the accent I've got, but I'm a Yorkshire man at heart, and I've come from a farming background, so an agricultural background, and I accidentally tripped into IT, and technology. Now, that fast forward a few years, and ultimately I started contracting and was self-employed and was working with a lot of organizations for delivering digital transformation, moving from usually Microsoft 365 to Google Workspace or vice versa. And what I was noticing was that in that project that we delivered, there was a lot of people that we emphasize a lot on the training and helping people move from one technology product to another. But ultimately, it was then after that project had finished, no one had an option to then continue that learning and ever moving things. So the technology side and the live learning that we're delivering with Ceyx was sort of born from that option around, actually, let's provide a product that our customers can continue their learning and keep on top of and increase their adoption of those technologies that we just implemented through the professional services. So yeah, very diverse customer set that that I sort of worked with and sort of started that proof of concept with. And ultimately, we're a year and a half down on the training side now, and yeah, we've got a good amount of customers that are giving us positive feedback. So yeah, it's sort of growing slowly and getting there.
So what's your general perception of how tech skills are taught in organizations? So I think I can see a shift if, you go back over kind of 10, 20 years I've been in Learn Tech, where it was kind of about individual packages. You get a bit of training on Excel or a bit of training on Word or whatever. Now we're moving to kind of like suites and whole software environments. So you'll have, it's quite common to talk about they're a Microsoft house or they're a Google house. You're in the Microsoft environment, you have Teams, and all the rest of that stuff, maybe Viva, or your kind of Google and the Google environment and so on. So have you seen that change, or was it different when you came into it, or is it?
It was very different, John. So I would absolutely safely say that some organisations don't teach people how to use tech. A lot of people have started it and stumbled and just work their way through it. There is a lot of options out there around e-learning. A lot of organizations obviously capitalize on that in terms of the e-learning content via LinkedIn or Udemy or Coursera and ultimately provide a need. However, I don't think a lot of learners are really taking advantage of that e-learning content. And the reason for that, I think it comes down to time and an employee's time. So if you've got a skill set that requires to use Excel and become real advanced within Excel, the only way some organizations offer that is that you watch multiple training videos or dedicate hours of time to learn that. And a lot of people, a lot of employees, we've all got busy lives now. We've all got, ultimately, with COVID has shifted around how people work, switching and dedicating some time to e-learning content that might be out of date because it might be a couple of months old because of the ever-changing technology platforms that we have. Ultimately, people don't dedicate that time as much as they should do, even if they have it dedicated to them. So, and there's also lots of other things that other people can do with that e-learning time, and they might not only utilize or use that time around how to use technology, but ultimately, there's huge efficiencies in what we find is a lot of people want to learn how to use their technology in a lot better way, be more efficient, help the technology work for them rather than them having to work with the technology. So setting up automation, and it's a good example I've got. Gmail is a great tool, but it's also a very busy tool, and your inboxes can very quickly come out of date. And one of our most popular sessions is making the most out of Gmail, which is focused on how to ultimately get Gmail to work for you and put things in certain places and label things in certain ways so that it highlights more important information to you rather than just having an inbox of emails that constantly come in.
Yeah, so rather than being pointed towards a generic program about email, people with your model, people would specifically work with that tool, how to use it with other tools, how to get the most out of it, how to kind of avoid common pitfalls and so on, yeah?
Correct. Yeah, correct, John, yeah.
And what's different about the way that you do this? We talked as if there's only two ways of training people in skills, your way, in technology skills, your way, and the kind of go to the LMS, get a course on Excel, learn how to do a pivot table. Oh, I don't need to know how to do a pivot table. I'm in marketing, I want to do a mail merge. How different is the way that you do it?
So we try and provide it in a way that the learner will choose what courses they want to do. So we have a full catalogue of live sessions, of individual 60 minutes or 90-minute sessions. So they're focused on a specific outcome of that session, so a technology outcome. A little bit different about what we do it is because we provide it at scale. So it's not dedicated to individual customers, that session. It is dedicated, or it's focused around the technology or the outcome that they're there to learn about. So for example, your point around pivot tables. We run one in Google Sheets, we run one in Excel. Now, as part of a e-learning module that you might have to do is you might have to go through pivot tables to get to where you ultimately want to get to, and that is ultimately more time. Our learning model is around, we have a learning management system. That's our central brain of all the sessions we run. And we have multiple customers within that LMS that allows a branded experience for each customer and their learners to then choose and select the sessions that they want to learn about. So typically we have various different types of people that enter into an organization. So you might have a new joiner that actually wants to focus on maybe some more beginner focused sessions on getting the most out of Gmail or getting started with Microsoft Outlook, and help them skill up. So they might be a new starter that's effectively not knowing about the technology that they're working with, or getting started with Microsoft Teams. And then we have some more intermediate and advanced focus sessions that then allow your established staff to actually learn more about the tools that they're using. So prime example, pivot tables. It's always an interesting question when you ask someone, can you do a pivot table for me? And someone, I reckon 90% of the room will say yes. Ask them to demonstrate it, probably not. So how we deliver that is ultimately giving people the option to choose that learning journey of live sessions that they want to attend. It's not forced upon them. They just get that option to learn and ultimately have a lot of flexibility on when they join the session that they want to join. So because we run the sessions every single week and daily, people have options to choose a session that works for them, that's live, and they can turn up to it. It's not an afternoon, it's not a morning, it's a hour session that works around their meetings that they can join and leave at 60 minutes or 90 minutes.
So you mentioned scalability. How scalable is this? I mean, obviously, it's not necessarily a completely bespoke program for every different client. You know, there's an element of cohort learning. You're in something which is multi-tenanted. There are people from all over the place. But how scalable is it really?
I like to think very scalable. So our limit as such is within the number of sessions that we could run in a week. And we can't ultimately run the same session in the same week, because we try and make it vary for each individual. Now, we do limit how many people attend the session from a live perspective. So ultimately, if we've got a full session we sort of max it out at 40 people, because once you get above 30, it sort of starts to get very busy. But if we're seeing demand of a course or a session that is pivot tables, keep that theme. We'll run another one the next day or the week after, and then advertise that as being that it's there. People can, through the LMS, can enroll onto a waiting list and effectively then be notified when the next session is on as such as well. So it might not work for them, but we try and give our learners at least 6 weeks worth of sessions that they can join. So if they can't make one week, or it's full, they make the one the week after and ultimately start that journey as well, as quickly as they can.
And how do you measure your results? Can you show good, tangible results from what you've done?
We can. So as much as everyone loves a bit of data, because of the tool that we're using as our central LMS, we track and can see and report on every single click or watch or what sessions people are attending within each customer. So we can track our dropout rates by customer. We can track our attendee rate in terms of who's there, what videos they're watching regarding e-learning content that we've got that maybe pre and post session. And ultimately, we try and survey all of our customers' learners before we start the service, and then we survey them during. So we ask them things like, how confident did they feel utilizing the technology tool that they use every single day? How efficient do they feel before they did the training, and then ultimately after the training as well? So we try and capture that feedback from going from where they thought they were from a proficiency level, maybe beginner or intermediate, and then ask them if they feel that they've, after an 8-week piece of training or attended some sessions, have they increased that to now be feeling advanced in Excel, for example, because of the sessions that they've attended.
But you don't get to link that to performance data back in the workplace. You're not required to do that type of.
We've never had a customer that has gone through, because it's not certified courses that we're running. It's more about efficiency. We've never been asked to put through back onto a customer saying, "Oh, can we put this into their learning and development program?" We do have that data, but we can add it in, but because it's more about the efficiency side of making people feel more confident with utilizing the tools that are ever changing, we try and keep them lighthearted and sort of people feel confident going, actually, yeah, I've watched that video now, I now feel better about utilizing Excel or Google Sheets, for example.
So it's very focused on meeting particular problems that people have with the software they're trying to use and overcoming that for them kind of in the moment, as it were, rather than giving sort of broad understanding, then testing later and so on.
Yeah, we do. Oh, so John, just to that point, we do little quizzes and things like that to help them to prove that knowledge, I'll say, in terms of just make sure they feel confident with it. But yeah, it's not certified as such.
But presumably it works because you keep growing as a company.
Yes.
I think. The Learning Hack podcast is supported by Learning News, the learning sector's newswire. Rob and his team are good friends of the podcast, and we really value the help and advice we've had from them, and they do a great job. For the very latest news from around the learning sector, for interviews with learning leaders, the latest from learning sector vendors and features on workplace learning, go to learningnews.com. So what initially interested me when we first chatted about this, because, we don't tend to feature companies in this way because it can look like a bit of an advert for the company. And what you're doing perhaps isn't that earth-shatteringly new in that, this is the way that all training had to go when the pandemic hit, that stuff that had been classroom training became sort of live online training. But what interested me was the fact that you've got a sort of blended model here. You're not coming at it from the angle of a face-to-face company that has added digital, but you're, if you don't mind me saying so, from a younger generation, a digital first person. But you've recognized the need for humans in the process here and that kind of human interactivity. So how unique or common do you think this model is? And,
So what we deliver from a content perspective, and you touched on it just then, and how we deliver it is nothing new. So the technology training has existed for, ever since Apple launched their first computer, Windows came live. And that ability of doing that face-to-face training, or those dedicated sessions, are absolutely still needed today. There will never be a replacement for that. And there's always going to be dedicated half-day sessions to help employees become certified or skilled up in big areas. Our uniqueness really is how we're making that learning journey accessible. So if someone attends some training on a Excel course, for example, they might learn a lot within that session. They might learn a lot within that dedicated period of time. But ultimately, with the technology platforms that we all exist on, they're changing every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, where there is a new feature or a new button. Now, how do we meet that in terms of on-demand perspective, or let's say a unique perspective, is we'd have to have a constant team delivering and changing videos and updating things and then communicating out those changes. So what I've tried to do, and what we're doing now, is effectively flip the model on its head, really, is around going, well, actually, let's, instead of it being focused on the specific element of the customer and branding it in their language and their terminology, is actually, let's focus it on the technology and how that technology has changed. So basically skilling up people and giving them that option. How we're doing that, and the unique side is actually because it is live and it's that person that you can talk to. It's not a video, it's not an e-learning module that's clicky. It's actually someone you can raise a question with. And when you speak to a lot of people, that effectively anyone can go to YouTube and watch a video, but do people do it? They don't, for some reason. They want to have that ability to raise a question. And historically, a lot of IT teams, sort of centralized technology teams, struggle with meeting business demands on the basis that it's about the technology. And if an IT team is not an expert in Microsoft Word, they won't necessarily be able to answer that user's question because they might not use that tool every single day in the technology team. But to that person, that learner that's raised it, actually, they really need quick access to someone that can answer the question that they've got, or find a session to then ask that question on, such as well. So, yeah, we try and meet that live element, that person, to have that charismatic piece of helping an employee learn about a technology subject that is changing every single week. Well, that's what we do. That's our uniqueness.
I think it's worth kind of filling in here for the basis of some of our listeners. I mean, Matt, you'll know about this feature of technology training, as it were. But I didn't know about it until quite recently. Fiona Letney in Fosway told me about this, that the technology sector in general has been very slow to adopt digital when it comes to training. Most of the training up to the pandemic was done face-to-face on software packages and the type of tech training that you do. Overnight, it all had to go digital, and that kind of gave them a boot in the arse, as it were. And also, kind of as a byproduct, this provided the fantastic success of Docebo, whose learning systems were kind of very good for companies such as their big clients like Amazon to then provide training to the people who bought their software. So generally, that would have been done face-to-face with a system like Docebo, which I know you use as well as your learning management system. Was really suited for that, and that has caused massive market growth for them. So would you like to kind of comment on that situation? Have you witnessed this at first hand?
Yeah, absolutely, John. I think it's funny actually say around the dedicated side is I genuinely feel on the technology side and the slowness, and the reason for is because technology is always, in some respects, been a bit of a dark art and a black box. So people sort of go, we'll just speak to the IT team and we'll let them teach us, and they're the experts as such. Now, that change on how technology is consumed, and COVID was a catalyst. It wasn't the start. It was a catalyst that accelerated it. Absolutely, change that overnight. However, people still do have that ability to go, well, and I have this challenge now. Where do I go to find this answer? And you are right, Docebo. So Docebo is our learning central LMS. They have large organizations that run their entire learning modules out of them, or learning skill sets as such, and provide content from various different sources as well as their own and other content providers. And that tool and that element for us is reason we selected Docebo was around the scalability piece of the fact that we can provide a unique experience, or a learner can have a unique experience of their branding, etc., and get that access as such to the quick answers. Actually, I'll have a session about technology next week. I'm excited to attend a session about technology next week because I'm seeing a person rather than just watching a video, or not necessarily understanding the comments or practicing things as well within that. So Docebo really has helped us, and I'll say technology as an industry and technology learning as an industry, to change the way that learners interact with technology, or at least learn about that interaction or that technology. So providing crib sheets before the sessions, providing video content before the sessions or even after the sessions, to help them get prepared for that session as such in front of them. And to your point, Amazon, the AWS, Amazon Web Services certification program is run completely out of Docebo now. The learning modules for all of their drivers in Amazon, I learned this from a Docebo customer event last year, now is all delivered out of Docebo. So all their Amazon drivers, the skill sets, the policies, everything is driven through a learning plan on Docebo as such as well. And yeah, we found out a bit about that last year.
So you're obviously meeting a need with what you do, and you're a growing company. We're in a market where there's a lot of consolidation. When I talk about the LearnTech market, a lot of consolidation, well-funded, bigger players who are increasingly opening up a distance between themselves and what's now becoming a very crowded mid-market. What are the biggest challenges for an organization like your own in scaling up?
It's a great question, John. There's a few. Our biggest one at the moment is awareness. And a lot of conversations we have, like with yourself, and hopefully it resonates with a few of your listeners, is it makes sense to approach it this way. And that around us talking about it now, I can guarantee someone will be the topic of what we're delivering and how we're delivering it, as like I've said before, is nothing new. And there is other tools out there that will be probably quick on the mark and start to offering that subset. There was a company I met in Las Vegas 2 weeks ago that are focusing on scalable live learning, very similar model to ours, but focusing it on leadership training and mental health awareness, things like that. So we are relatively new in terms of the focusing it on technology. But do I think it's going to be? It's not going to be an overnight success as such. It's going to be something we've grown. We're the first ones that I've come across that are focusing it or approaching the problem this way. So our biggest challenge right now is awareness and just helping organizations become more accessible, get technology training more accessible to them, rather than just focusing on purchasing packages. The challenge around other areas around, we've actually had, from a scale-up side, and if I talk about this internally now, we've actually had some challenges around getting the skill sets for actual trainers, because everyone can deliver. There's a lot of people that can deliver a session face-to-face, but delivering a session via a webinar that then allows a mediator to control that session, that's also a challenge as well. And we've had some great success with recruiting people from actual educational sector, that have been quite technical people, and that's helped us scale our offering a little bit as well on being able to offer different types of technology sets across Microsoft, and starting to focus the teams on individual sectors or technology stacks as such, like Microsoft, Google, Slack and Zoom. So yeah, it is, as you say, there is a big challenge out there, and hopefully our uniqueness of how we're approaching it right now helps us get in front of the customers as such.
At the kind of core of my interest and intrigue about this is I can't believe there aren't thousands of companies like yours, because it's such a basic need. I mean, obviously the things you mentioned, like mental health, are very important and fundamental as well, but it's such a fundamental thing to be able to operate the tech tools properly that you deal with absolutely every day within an organization. Anyone who's worked in an organization will be kind of aware of this, that people constantly just can't work the things, or else they knew how to work the thing. It's gone through an upgrade. I've got this problem with my own computer kit. Thank you very much, Apple. It goes to a chip upgrade or something like that. Suddenly nothing works. How do I make this work again? How do I get back the workflow that I had before, given the change in the technology tools? And I think perhaps there is a thing, the reason why it tends to be a bit face-to-face is, if that happens, if everything in front of you on your screen has seized up and is not working anymore, technology is giving you this massive migraine. What's the answer going to be to that? Oh, well, it's a bit more technology, some training technology. Well, maybe no, I just want someone to sort my problem for me. So it's a very pragmatic approach, it seems to me. And you're bringing the kind of human element, giving context, which is so difficult for technology tools to do. And I think you realize now I'm rowing towards the obligatory AI question, the kind of interactive help that you're supplying. Isn't this going to be replaced by AI pretty soon with the new generation of generative AI tools?
I'm going to say no, and the reason I've got some justification on that no is around, we will always, as humans, we will always require some sort of human interaction. We'll always want it. As much as AI can help us become more efficient in terms of the way that we're going to move, it's also, from our perspective around technology, a huge opportunity to actually upskill individuals to help interact with that AI. So eventually, probably there's going to be a video avatar of me, someone talking over a transcripted interactive session that's maybe deemed as live, but actually is just a recording of an AI avatar talking about technology. From a human element, we're always going to want to talk to someone and raise a question. An AI will produce the answer, but you've got to know how to interact with the AI to actually get the answer that you want. Now, is it the same outlay in terms of Googling something or going on YouTube and watching a video right now? Potentially. We're seeing it as, so just to give you some context around why we see this as an opportunity, is the back end of this year, so Microsoft and Google Workspace have both announced that AI, or from Microsoft's perspective, something called Copilot, will be launching the back end of this year. And for any of your listeners, I would absolutely go and read about it. In terms of Google Workspace has got their equivalent as well, which is, it's called Barb at the moment, but it's probably likely to change in the Google Workspace instance. But that AI and that interaction piece around how it works with your collaborative tools, so like Outlook, Microsoft Word, Copilot will be sat across or underneath everything that you're doing within the Microsoft environment. There's some huge efficiency and benefits that will come with that. And the opportunity to teach people how to tap into that Copilot knowledge, the questions to answer it, how to interface with AI. A lot of people, it took me a few weeks really to understand actually how can I get more out of AI than just asking a simple question and having conversation with it. It's not a natural feeling someone to actually talk via a keyboard to something that isn't actually a person. And there's an opportunity for us to actually start to help organizations and help people and learners to understand, actually, God, you know what, actually I could ask that question. One example I've always talked about with a lot of people is Copilot will give you the ability, and everyone has this problem, but there is a huge email train of different 20, 30, 40 different responses of people just on a thread.
Oh.
You'll be able to raise a question to Copilot and say, can you provide a summary of that email? And it will spit out a paragraph of all the content that is read within that email thread and effectively give you a summary of what needs to be done. And there's huge opportunities around multilingual sides as well. So what I mean by that is the conversation we're having now is in English. AI will get to a position relatively soon where, and there is some products out there that do it, where you'll be able to sit on a call and I could speak in English, have a little avatar next to me on the screen that will then translate it in real time and effectively launch back a synthesized voice or in Spanish, in German, in French.
Dutch, hopefully. I'm going to a conference next week and all my notes as a speaker and communications are in Dutch. So I'm using a lot of Google Translate. I can't wait for that to happen. But seriously, I mean, what's really interesting here, I think, is we're seeing a new practice area emerge, isn't it? And it's around prompts. You know, how do you use the AI tools? What are the sort of prompts that will produce the kind of result you see you need? And you see this happening on forums, subreddits, all over the place. People are sharing their prompts to be able to create certain things. So is this how you see your business moving to teaching people how to use these tools, which obviously needs human kind of knowledge and interactive help in the same way?
Yeah, absolutely, John. I think the Google Home was a great, and Alexa and things like that was a gentle warm up to people coming into it. And with single transactional basis requests as such, you're right, absolutely. But the opportunity, like the skill set required to get the most out of AI. If I go back to our original why we started and the why Ceyx exists, is ultimately we want to take the frustration out of utilizing technology and helping people become a lot more efficient within that. Whether we train people on an individual app like Excel, or if we help people understand actually how can they integrate into Copilot or get more out of utilizing Microsoft Teams using Copilot. People will figure it out and they'll do that, but they'll also go, actually, do you know what? I'd like to learn about how to use this the best way by learning from someone who's an expert and talk about it and answer a specific question that will then go, oh, do you know what? My use case is a little bit different. Well, I just need a little bit of a helping hand on how I get to the answer of that, rather than spending a few minutes or 10 minutes trying to Google or YouTube something, or even ask ChatGPT, how do I do this? And then bet you have about 6 or 7 prompts trying to figure out to get it to be unique around the actual scenario that they're trying to overcome.
Yeah, I suppose there is also the thing that when you use a tool like ChatGPT, you are dealing with something that's created by a company. I mean, for instance, I was using Bard to write notes for our other podcast the other day, and I found that Bard, which is run by Google, doesn't have quite such a flattering biography when I ask it to write it up of Bill Gates, as perhaps the Microsoft sponsored one would. And there's a sense in which you kind of, in your quest to use a tool, you have to know some of the things it doesn't do that well. And the tool, which comes from the company, is not going to really tell you that. We all know that. And one of the things that kind of disappeared from training, in a sense, with the loss of classrooms, is I can remember going on training courses many years ago, and the trainer would say, okay, this is what they don't want to tell you, but this is why this thing doesn't work, and this is how you make it work. Here's a workaround, and so on. It seems like is that part of what you're bringing back into it with your model, that kind of human knowledge?
Yeah, I like to refer to them as myths. There's 2 sides to the story of around. There's a few people that have myths around, well, it can't do that. Yeah, but well, actually, if you learn about it and understand it or have the session, yeah, absolutely. And the world today of learning is great at consuming what someone has put as a headline or that could be the most clickable headline in the world, but whether or not that's true is a very different matter. But the ultimately people will still drive towards it. Now, that's someone's opinion and thoughts, but as you've just rightly said, that interaction piece, that what it can do, how we can get the most out of it, how we can get better at it or better interacting with that technology. Yeah, you're right. People in Google's of the world, the Microsoft of the world, are not going to talk about their limitations of the tools that they're creating. You go to forums for that. Now, if you've come back to effectively going, well, actually, it's talking about a learner who wants to find out, has a specific question of something they're struggling with, the team will tell them, actually, that's not the right way to approach that. There might be another way. And formulas is a great example of this, where people have a very set way where they've Googled something and they've gone, we need to use this formula in Excel. But actually, if you go back to their raw requirement of what they're trying to achieve with that data set, with that sheet, actually, there might be a much more efficient way of having and being able to ask that question of someone that's been a bit effective from an efficiency side to go, well, actually, think about this formula. It will be more quicker at doing it, or will produce a better result. And again, it's what's that person's knowledge, and getting the most out of that individual, that expert, to then help that learner become more efficient on what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, it can be the case that technologists assume that that need is met by all the by the internet, by the forums, the subreddits, and so on, that you can go and find out. But actually kind of plunging into that world, I found personally myself with sort of troubleshooting software that's going wrong for me, can be enormously frustrating. You might have a particular thing that doesn't quite work in your Mac operating system. You go onto Reddit and you just find loads of tirades from people who will complain about what a terrible company Apple is. And then there'll be a big war about, no, they're a great company, blah, 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 blah. And, 3 hours later, you're kind of crawling out of that rabbit hole with the one tiny piece of information that you were trying to get. So you can save people massive amount of time. Talking about mythology there brings us neatly back to the beginning, trying to wrap this up and stop it turning into another one of my 2-hour specials. It's fascinating to hear what you said. Thanks for sharing all this with us. Lastly, we need to close up. It's usual to ask people where they can follow you. Where can we follow Matt Wilkinson and find out what you're up to? And we'll put your contact links in show notes. But can you also tell listeners about the people and sources you look to and listen to in developing your own knowledge about learning and technology?
Yeah, so feel free to add me on LinkedIn. That's where we do a majority of our conversations. We're on Twitter as well, but that's just Ceyx Ltd, or the handle of Ceyx Ltd. And there's a good question, John, on the people and where I draw, let's say, passion from and really and my knowledge as such as well. So a bit similar to yourself, I'll do a lot of digging on the internet around the topics that we cover, and I try and stay away from any of the forums. Yeah, and I think and you touched on it earlier, actually. Again, one of my uniqueness is I can consume some technical data and actually regurgitate it in a more meaningful way. And that's how I've effectively made a living and one of my passions in life, I'll say. So that's one of my sources. In terms of podcasts and things that I listen to as yourselves, in terms of it's great to get a huge variety of the learnings from different people and different apps and different opportunities that exist within the learning world and that you talk to as well. So thank you, John, for that in terms of that. And,
you're welcome.
I've also got I listen to the High Performance podcast as well that give me a lot of insight, and I suppose from a selfish perspective is around helping me stay motivated within the challenging world of startups that we all exist to. It's not all positivity and things like that, but ultimately the High Performance podcast helps me get an insight into other people that have done the walked the journey, let's say, or had the sporting achievement and get an insight into their mentality as well. I also draw a huge amount of passion as well from my wife as well. So Kirst, she's fully behind me in terms of everything we're delivering and doing, and she's also, let's say, technology challenged as well. So she attends some of our sessions in the company she works for as well. So yeah, it's good to have her soundboard as such on other things as well. And then I'm a big believer in self-development and personal coaching as well. So I have a couple of coaches that I refer to, and one of them's Steve Baxter from 9 Dots Coaching, and he does a very good job of, and this is a good it's a good example of, he lifts me out of my jam jar and plonks me next to it, and allows me, and we delve into this in terms of into the session and focus on actually what does the label on the outside of the jam jar say, and then what's actually going on in the jam jar as well, and how we can make anything a bit clearer of those current challenges that I'm experiencing. So coaching and personal coaching to anyone, I would fully recommend doing it. It helps me tremendously on, not just from a mental standpoint, but also from a analysing and ultimately helping me become clearer in certain ways to help me navigate the challenges of life that we all have.
Well, thanks a lot, Matt, for lifting us out of our jam jar in the last 40 minutes or so. And I'm sure a lot of our US listeners, of which we now have more than UK listeners, will be pleased to get some of these kind of salty UK terms to use, such as being lifted out of one's jam jar. And long may you carry on lifting people out of their jam jars. Thanks very much.
Thank you, John. It was great to be on.
That's all on the Learning Hack podcast for this time. Many thanks to our guest and to our sponsors. The Learning Hack is completely independent and transparently funded by sponsorship and your Patreon contributions. If you want to help others find us, please like, follow, rate, review and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice or on YouTube. And you can contribute at patreon.com/learninghack.
Next time, we'll be looking at AI and adaptive learning with someone I wanted to get on the show for ages, Marcus Bernhardt. And he can teach me how to pronounce the name of his company as well. Let's have a go. Oprism? Till then.
Stay curious, learning people.
Now I finally get it.